Hello everyone. Today I will start with the series for the topics for the biostatistics. It's a very important topic. There were so many questions in real edit exam which were asked based on the study design. Basically you should know the basics before going jumping to any other thing, like what type of study is this, in which one there is exposure and in which one there is like cause and disease. So first of all, let's do what is research design. So in structure of research design, we have two type of studies. That's experimental and observational. And in the observational, we have analytical and descriptive. And in analytical, two types: case control, cohort, plus one more cross-sectional, three types. So it's very important, like in observational they can ask you like types of analytical study, and what is the basis of case control, like how it starts, is it a future study, past study, cohort, and what usually it measures. So let's go to the next part. So remember, in descriptive studies examine the pattern of the disease, whereas in analytical studies the suspected causes of disease are studied. Let's start with the flowchart so you can remember easily. Did the investigator assign exposures? So yes, if exposure is assigned, then it's an experimental study, and if no, then observational study. So in experimental we will have random allocation. So the samples will be like the selected, like the population which are going to be in the study, cases or everything, they will be selected randomly. So random allocation. Then it can be two types: randomized control trial or non-randomized control trial. So exposure will be there and there will be outcome of disease. Whereas in observational there will be a comparison group also. So yes, analytical, there will be direction. So let's see how the direction is seen in case of the analytical study. So whereas in cohort study, always remember, it's a like from you will have exposure and then you will observe the the study for the outcome. There is no disease in the starting, so you're just exposing one group and one is non-exposed. And in real exam, it will be a long question will be given and they will ask you, okay, which study is this one? Is it a perspective or is it a retrospective or cohort case control, like this? So you have to remember which one is in the past and future. So in cohort there is always the exposed and non-exposed group, whereas in case control, just the name say, in case means somebody with disease and control means healthy individual. So it's from the past. It's like they will say it's a deceased individual and then they will observe the, for like after a long time they will do the follow-up. So bias seen in this study is the recall bias, because of the long time taken and in the past, like it will be hard for some individual to remember like what has happened and they can just lie about something. So there is chances of recall bias. And then as we have the cross-sectional study, exposure and outcome at the same time. So it's a very important topic. Let's pass out to the other one: hierarchy of study design, thesis and this one. So remember this sequence, sometimes they ask the sequence also: case report at the lowest, and then case series, ecological studies, cross-sectional, case control, cohort, and randomized control trial. So randomized control trial establish the causality very better than other ones. Going to the observational studies, no control over the circumstances. So descriptive, most basic demographic studies, whereas in analytical we compare the studies testing and hypothesis. Cross-sectional, snapshot, no idea on cause effect relationship for a single point of time. Remember, single point of time in cross-sectional from S single. And cohort, prospective study, cause and effect is in the you will start, and then you will see in the future how it has affected, like how smoking affect the lung cancer, like you will start to observe that. And in retrospective, cause and effect relationship can be inferred. It is a in the past. So let's see this diagram. So exposure and the cohort study, exposure is there and then is the outcome, whereas look is in the backward direction. Remember this thing by your heart. And then we have analytical studies. In analytical studies, cohort begins with exposure. Example is smoker and non-smoker. When you're just reading the question, try to see whether like in the starting they are having a disease or any exposure. So then you will come to know, and they will say, okay, we are having this study from like last 5 year, and then we are studying back, then also the backward study. But if they will say that we have started the exposure and now we are moving to like see how it has effect on the individual, then it's a cohort. This word is very important because there was the question was asked and they will say prospective, retrospective, to just make you confused. Then in the cohort, remember population, people without disease, expose, there is no disease. This thing because in only case control, expose, non-expose. When they're exposed, in the starting there is no disease. When we are beginning the studies, and then they will say disease, no disease, not exposed, disease, no disease. So this one is a very important thing. The advantages and disadvantages of the cohort study. So see, advantages of cohort study, it's establish population based incidence. So what the cohort study measure is, remember 2O 2R means, see, 2O and then R, it measures relative risk. So relative risk can examine rare exposure, so it can be used in rare exposure disease. So we can disease for like because it's in the future, like we can see temporal relationship can be inferred, time to event analysis is possible, can be used where we cannot use the randomized trial, so we can use this one. Risk factor cannot be quantified, selection and information bias are decreased because the selection will be based on the starting, we are exposing one and non-exposing. Multiple outcome can be studies, like with the smoking we can like also study so many confounding other factors like smoking, lung cancer, other disease can also be studied. And let's go to the disadvantages. So in the disadvantages, it's a lengthy and expensive study. Sometimes it requires large sample, but not suitable for the rare disease, not suitable for long latency, and some environmental changes can also bring changes to the studies. Non-response, migration, and loss of follow-up by some like follow-up is also problem here, and recall is the bias which is seen in case control. Sampling and assessment and observer bias are still possible. So this is the advantages of, they can just give the advantages and then they can say, oh, is it a cohort or case control. Then let's do prospective. You expose an individual, then studies start and disease occur. This one, and this is prospective, study start, exposure and disease. Whereas in retrospective, this one, exposure, disease occur, and then the study start from the past. Let's go to cohort like this. Exposure, then outcome, exposure, outcome, going back at retrospective, and this one, it can be retrospective also if we can going back, two types. So this is the thing we have to look when we are doing the cohort study, how much selection bias present and which step we take to minimize information bias, how complete was the follow-up of both groups, were potential confining factors sought and control for the analysis. So just remember this thing when you have the rough sheet on your paper, just write this: experimental is the randomized and non-randomized. In observational, it's cohort, case control, cross section, and ecological. Basically, these three C's remembered in observational. In observational, then the type is analytical. So this is a very important topic. Thank you.